In this video, we shall discuss the different HTTP methods and how they are used along with the Flask application. In order to study the different HTTP methods in the Flask environment, let us first create an HTML form in which there is a input type is equal to text field is there whose name of the field is nm, and then there is a submit button. So if you click on this submit button, the form data is going to be sent to this URL, which is mentioned in the action attribute of the form, and it is localhost 5000/login. So this is the URL to which the data is going to be sent. And to begin with, we shall put the method attribute of the form equal to post. So this is a simple HTML form that we have created. And now this is the Python script in which this login URL is defined, and it is bound with the view function called login. By default, this root decorator method accepts the data from the browser in the get method, but you can alter the behavior by mentioning the value to this methods parameter, which can be provided to the root method. So methods is equal to, there are two possible values are given in the list, which is the value of this methods parameter. So we have written a HTML form which sends the data in the post method. So if it is equal to the post method, the request dot method, the value of the request dot method attribute of this request object, then what will happen? The data associated with the nm parameter of the form will be stored in the variable called user, and the browser will be redirected towards the associated URL with the function called welcome, which is already defined here. We have a function called as welcome the variable part. So if the form sends, let us say, mvl as the name, as the value associated with the request.form nm, so user will be mvl. So this welcome rule and the associated view function welcome will receive name here. The output will be welcome, whatever name that you will be providing. This will happen when the data is sent in the post method. If it is not sent in the post method, otherwise it should be get, because there is second option is get. So the value associated with the nm attribute of the form can be fetched by using request.args.get. So the entry in the text field will be stored in the variable called user, and the same function will again be called. The output of the both cases will be the same. Welcome mvl, for instance, if the text box in the HTML form is entered with mvl. But in the first place, what happens when the form uses post method attribute or get method attribute, that we have to see. So this is the explanation to this login view function. Now what we will do, we will open that HTML form. As it is, we have seen that the method is equal to post is used. So we expect this function to be executed. Output will be welcome mvl, and then we will change the method attribute of the form from post to get, and we will see that this will be executed. So let us now open the browser. First open the HTML form and see see how the redirection takes place with the help of the URL for function. So this is the form.html that we have opened. Inside the text box, let me enter the data. If I press the submit button, the form data will now be redirected towards the localhost 5000/login using the post method. So therefore, the associated view function to the login URL will identify that the method is post, and therefore the data will be redirected towards the URL associated with welcome name is equal to MVL. So first we have to start the server and then press the submit button. So the name of the script is methods.py. I will start the server now and then press on this submit button. It is showing you welcome MVL. That is what is to be expected. Now change the method attribute to get from post. And open the HTML form again. So the same HTML form is in front of you. I will enter the data again, and the server is anyway running. So I'll press on this submit button. There you see the browser is redirected towards the welcome MVL URL. Same output is being displayed, but now this time the get method is in use. So that is how HTTP post and get methods can be used to send the data to the associated URL.
In this video, we shall see what are the templates as far as the Flask application framework is concerned.
So in this exercise, we shall see how to use the template in a Flask application. We have seen that any view function which is mapped with a particular rule or a particular URL, the function returns the text in the, or rather the output in the form of a plain text. So if you have return hello world, as we have written in the very first application, if you just say return hello world, the text hello world is rendered in the form of a plain text. But it can be rendered in the form of a HTML if the string to be rendered is manually composed in the form of an HTML text. So for example, in this script, this is the URL. This is the URL rule which is bound with this function called as index. And inside this index function, I have constructed a variable called str with the help of a triple quoted string, in which these HTML tags are concatenated to form a simple HTML hello world, which is put inside the h1 and slash h1 tags, so that hello world is expected to be displayed with the heading tag. That means it will be in a bolder format. And this string is now being returned when this function is called. So what do you expect? After starting the server, if I just say localhost 5000 backslash, then this index function rather will be executed, and hello world is expected to be printed with h1 tag, that means in a bolder font. So this is what we expect. This is the same exercise of hello world that we did in the beginning, but now it is in the form of HTML. So let us see. So let me start the server by executing this hello.py. The server is running. Now I will just issue localhost :5000/, which will execute the index function which is mapped to it, and it will display hello world. So this is a manual way of rendering HTML to the browser. via our view function. So now instead of manually rendering the text in the HTML form to the browser, we shall now put that HTML script into an HTML page and redirect our browser from the view function directly to that particular HTML page by using the render template function in the Flask module. So for that purpose, first I have created a simple hello world HTML web page, and it has to be stored in a templates folder in your application folder. That means what? So this is going to be our HTML, rather the Python script, which we will eventually run to start our Flask server. This is the hello.py. On the same level of which there must be a templates folder. This is of course our virtual environment. So in the same directory in which this hello.py is there, create a folder called as templates, and in which you store this hello.html, right? So this is what you need to do whenever you want to fire a template from the Flask view function. That HTML script must be present in this templates folder. Now coming back to this hello.py Python script, in order to render the template, you have to use a function called as render template itself, which is present in the Flask module. So you have to import it from Flask, import the Flask class and function render template. So like before, this backslash URL is bound to the index function. Now instead of manually rendering the HTML code, I'll just say return render template, which is the template that you want to, which is the HTML page that you want to render, hello.html. Ensure that it is already present in the templates folder. So this is what you should write in the hello.py, the Python script which you will use for starting your server. So let us start the server by executing this hello.py. This is now running. Go back to the browser now and visit the same URL, localhost 5000 backslash. Again the hello world will be printed, but now the difference is that this hello world is now not rendered manually by creating a cascaded or concatenated string having HTML tags, but rather there is a HTML page hello.html in the templates folder, and that is being rendered as a template.
In this video, we shall see what are the static files in a Flask application.
So just as the templates to be rendered in a Flask application are stored or put into a folder called as templates, similarly all the static files which are really needed for the execution of the web pages or templates. For instance, there may be any JavaScript files, or there may be any cascaded style sheet CSS files. They will be stored in another special folder called as static, in which in this example I am going to store a file called as hello.js. So this hello.js is stored in the static folder in your Flask application. So what is the purpose of this hello.js? Because in this hello.js I have defined a function called as say hello, which will be executed when I click this button. So there is a on the home page or web page, and I'm just creating a button. On click event of this button will fire this say hello function which is in the hello.js. So that I have to, the URL for this I have to give to this script type is equal to text JavaScript, src is equal to, you must be aware of the syntax with which you define the location of the JavaScript file in your web page. So what is the URL for this file hello.js? A special endpoint called a static is used, and its URL is obtained by a well-known, we have already used this function URL for. So URL for static, it will obtain the URL for the static folder. Another argument to this URL for function is the file name is equal to this. So whatever the URL for this hello.js will be fetched by this URL for function will be given as the value of this src parameter. For script type is equal to text oblique JavaScript. Okay, so this completes our discussion of the template in this example. Okay. Now this is that JavaScript file which I am talking about, hello.js has one function defined, say hello. All it is doing is when the function is executed, it will pop up a hello world message. Okay, so this is the JavaScript file which is stored in the static folder in our Flask application. So this is my Flask application folder in which the templates folder is there, in which this index.html is already there, and there is a static folder in which this hello.js is stored. Okay, so the template and the JavaScript file are already available in your Flask application. Now we shall have a look at the Python part of the entire code. It is very simple. All it is doing is defining a URL rule slash by the root decorator, and the associated or bound function is index, and it is doing nothing but rendering an index.html template by the function called as render template. So what I am going to do, I'll start the server of course, and then I'll give you the browser will be given the URL as localhost 5000 slash. Okay, so what will happen? The index function will be executed, the view function index will render the index.html. For this index.html, internally it is requiring the hello.js which I have already mentioned by using the URL for static. Okay, so let us see one by one the activity. Start the server, open the browser, give the URL and see the result. So the Python code to define that URL is present in the static.py to render an index.html. So I will execute that static.py from the Python prompt and start the server. Okay, so it is already now starting. Now we have to go to the browser and give localhost slash. So the result.html will be rendered. It will have a button called say hello, that was there in the HTML code. Now if I click on this, the on click event will call the say hello function which is defined in the hello.js, the URL for which is obtained by the URL dash or underscore 4 function, and you should see this hello world alert message which is generated by.
In this video, we shall see the form attribute of the request object in a Flask application.
Using this example, we shall now see how to send an HTML form data to a particular URL which is defined by the root decorator in your Flask application. So to start with, you have to import all the required functions and classes. As usual, you anyway import the Flask class because you want to render the template. Import the render template function and also import the request object. Okay, so this Python script actually has two rules which are defined. One is this backslash URL and the other is the slash result URL, which the root method rather, while defining this slash result rule, also takes one more argument, which is the methods argument. And methods have been, or any of these two methods, post or get method, can be applicable or acceptable to this particular result URL, of which we are basically interested in what happens if the method is post. So that afterwards, initially when the server starts and you give the URL in your browser like localhost 5000 slash, the bound function here is in this case student. This is the view function, and when this function is executed, a student.html template, which obviously must be present in the templates folder of your application, will be rendered. What is this student.html? It is a simple form in which some data can be entered. That we shall have a look at it afterwards. Right. So start the server, give the slash backslash URL. This template will be rendered. It will generate a form. So the user will now enter the form. So at this juncture, shall we see what is the form? This is a simple form in which three text inputs are generated. Input type is equal to text. That means it is a text box. Four rather. One text box for name, physics, chemistry, and mathematics, and then there of course there is a submit button. So importantly, these all input types are present in the form, whose action attribute is directed towards a URL localhost 5000 slash result, and the method is post. So this is a simple, as you will see, a very simple HTML form that is created, and this student.html is put into the templates folder. Now coming back to this Python script, this is the result URL which is used as the action attribute of the form. So what does it mean? When you click the submit button, the form will be posted to this result URL. And since in the HTML code you have used the method is equal to post, so the data will be received by this result URL in the post method. So the associated function view function is result. This will be executed. This statement is true. Request method is equal to post. So therefore what will happen? It will fetch the entire data from the form using the request.form method. And what it will contain? It will contain all the form data in the form of a dictionary object, and that dictionary object will be called as result. Right? So using this result dictionary object as a parameter, the another template result.html, which is also present in the templates folder, will be rendered by this result function. So render template result.html. What is there in result.html, that we shall see, but the result.html template will be provided another parameter or attribute. Result is equal to, what is this result? This is the name of the dictionary variable. Rather, this is the parameter to be provided to that template, and this is the dictionary object result. This is the result that have been defined here. So in effect, what is going to happen? As this server starts, a form will be displayed, form will be filled by the user, submitted to this result URL, and it will fetch the entire form data into the result object, and that will be rendered to this result.html. So finally what remains? What is present in result.html. So this is that result.html template. It starts with the mandatory doc type HTML tag, and this is the rest of the HTML. This is what is the Jinja 2 template instructions. So all those conditionals, expressions and loop statements are used or written, in this case the curly bracket and percent sign on one side and percent on the right curly bracket. In between this you are writing a for loop, and this for loop runs over result.iter_items. What is iter items? It will fetch an iterator for the dictionary object called as result. So iter items method of the dictionary object is used to return an iterator. And you know that the dictionary object is a collection of items. Each item is a key value pair. So for each key value pair in the result object, what you are doing, you are just putting the value of key and value. Key and value are put into the row of a table. In the first cell of the row you are displaying key, second cell of the row you are displaying the value. So all the text boxes that you entered, name, physics, chemistry, mathematics, the names of the keys and the associated values will be displayed in the table. So as a result, what you should see? You should see a table being generated on your browser. Okay, so these are the three parts. One is the Python script, which is a Flask sort of application. Second is the form, and third is the template. So let us see one by one how the result ultimately comes onto your browser. So first let me start this Python script form data.py, in which the two URLs slash and slash result are defined. They are bound with two functions. First function is displaying the form, and the other is displaying the result of the form data into a table. So start the server and go to the browser. So the browser is here, and just give the URL localhost 5000 \. It will render a form. Enter the data and press the submit button. What happens? The form data will be posted to /result URL. The associated view function will fetch the form data by using request.form into a dictionary object, and that dictionary object will be rendered by result.html, in which there is a Jinja 2 template code which runs a for loop and generates a table like this. So this is the final output of our entire Flask application activity.